Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Denise Hill, and I'm the Head of Engagement at Visit Scotland. And today, along with my colleague Chris Greenwood, we're absolutely delighted to be having this opportunity to talk to you about planning, and in particular about scenario planning as a tool to help businesses to plan out their next steps through the various phases and the many challenges presented by the COVID pandemic along the roadmap to recovery. Now, throughout the last year, Visit Scotland has been working to provide advice and resources to help tourism businesses, and I'm sure many of you will already be familiar with our VisitScotland.org hub for the industry, where we share a wide range of resources, and at this time there'll be things in there, data and insights on the impact of COVID and the pandemic on our key markets and our own industry. There are presentations on topics such as the profile of those visitors set to be the first to return, and lots of sharing of best practice examples of how businesses are adapting to meet the challenges and the opportunities. Now, the Scenario Planning Toolkit, the front cover of which you can see on the screen right now, will be the subject of today's discussion, and it's another one of these resources that is posted up on the VisitScotland.org site. We published it back at the end of last year as a support to businesses, and it's available for everybody to access and make use of there. The genesis of this was a request from the STERG group, the Scottish Tourism Emergency Response Group. Many of you will have read, maybe are following the minutes of their meetings on .org, which we post up every week. But the group had asked us to create some scenario planning materials, which Chris and his team did a wonderful job of. High level at first, and then we quickly decided we needed to make it, rather than an academic exercise, something that was a much more practical tool for businesses to be able to use. So we set about doing that, reached out to industry, and Melanie Allen, who's with us today, was among the people who helped us pull together that resource and try and make it as useful for businesses as it could be. One of the things that was suggested was that it would be useful to road test it with some real live businesses, and Melanie was enormously helpful in helping us to pull together a subset, a group of businesses from your sector, from the guest house and bed and breakfast sector, to come and share their thoughts and their ideas on the back of using this toolkit. And today we will use those insights, the input and the ideas that we had from that group as a major support for today's presentation. Now, the last 13 months have been incredibly challenging, but with Scottish Government having set a date for reopening, or indicated a date, we hope, for reopening, today's presentation is very much about being forward looking. It has a focus on the future and planning for the next month, 3 months, 12 months, and we know that planning at a time when we cannot yet be exactly sure of the various scenarios that will play out is incredibly difficult, but it's nonetheless critical in emerging through restart and into the recovery phase for our industry. Now, today I'll say up front, we don't have all of the answers, but we have worked with that group of your peers to gather ideas, and on the back of that scenario planning tool to pick up their thoughts. And these thoughts may or may not map exactly onto your own business and onto your own experience, but we do hope that they will at least be useful as a sharing today and a useful starter for 10 as you start to look at the scenarios that you will face, and we hope that there will be a useful way of approaching the toolkit for using with your own business. Now, as part of today's session, we've allowed some time at the end for thoughts and for questions at the end of Chris's section. But please do, in the course of this, use the question function at the top of the screen and submit any questions or thoughts that you have as we work through the presentation. Now, and just before I hand over to Chris Greenwood, Visit Scotland's Insight Manager, who's going to walk us through the process and the outputs from the scenario planning workshops, I want just quickly to hand over to Melanie Allen, who is Chair of the Scottish Guesthouse and B&B Association, an exciting new development for the sector and somebody who was extremely helpful to us in pulling together that peer group to work on and create the resource for today. So thank you very much for that, Melanie. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. Thanks very much, Denise. This is a bit of a monumentous day, I think, for guest houses and bed and breakfast, and being a B&B owner myself, it's been a bit of a journey over the past 4 months, really. And I'd like to thank Visit Scotland, Denise and Chris and Alan Patrick behind the scenes for helping us and all the hard work in the background. So really this all started back in January, where we were facing issues as a sector with the short-term lets and also with grant funding. And I started off a newsletter just to really inform people as best I could as to what was going on. And this then escalated through with several people getting in touch who were, you know, kind of feeling the same things, and just really got together as a group. And I'm delighted to say 4 months on, we're now, you know, a really strong committee, and we've got representatives from right across Scotland, some great business owners, and a great variety of people within the sector who have been working incredibly hard with dealing with the press, getting information out, feeding things into STERG and the Scottish Tourism Alliance. So it really has been a great effort, and we're now at a point where we're, you know, starting to make a difference with bringing our voice together as a sector. We've still got challenges, so we've managed to get grant funding with colleagues in the tourism industry. We've got grant funding for our sector with restart grants and grants for council tax, bed and breakfast. However, we've still got challenges ahead, and I think this is an ideal time for us to be on this webinar and all the work that Visit Scotland have done in the background. The challenges ahead, we've still missed out on the £6,000 top-up grant, which guest houses on non-domestic rates didn't receive earlier on this year. We've still got issues with easing of travel restrictions and uncertainty around when we're going to be able to fully reopen cross-border travel. We've still got issues with the islands, and we've still got issues with international travel, amongst others. So this is the perfect time for us to be looking at our businesses within ourselves, but also coming together as a group and sector, and working together in a more cohesive way. So with that, I'll provide more information at the end of the session as to follow-ups from SGHBBA, but for now I'll pass back on to Chris with the slides.
Thank you very much, Melanie, and thank you, Denise, as well. Yeah, I think just to reiterate everything that's said, we've done a number of sectors where we've taken this toolkit and done some workshops, and I'd like to thank everybody from the B&B Guesthouse Alliance and all the input they provided. It was certainly a very interesting session. Each sector has got its own nuances, and it's really interesting to see how the geographical spread of businesses in this particular sector have come up with some commonality of issues, but also some unique differences based on location, size, and individual conditions. Anyway, My role at Visit Scotland within the research department was to really take this period of uncertainty, and when COVID struck, we were put in quite difficult situations in trying to be able to understand what's going on amongst businesses, amongst consumers, and be able to feed that into decision makers and back to the industry so that decisions and strategy can be made. Now, one thing that's really been highlighted through the pandemic is the need for adaptability and flexibility. And because there has been so many unknowns, in terms of when lockdowns could happen, be they national, regional, access to markets, suppliers being disrupted, and timetables for reopening and things like that. These have all sort of led to situations where it's been very difficult for people to plan or rely on their historic planning methods. Certainly for Visit Scotland, one of the things that we lost quite early on was our traditional methods of measurement, our monitors. So things like the Great Britain Tourism Survey, which measures domestic overnight tourism, and the International Passenger Survey conducted by the Office of National Statistics, which measures international inbound. These surveys were suspended during the period of the pandemic. Thankfully, they are beginning to restart now, but we have had disrupted measure. So we found it very difficult to know the volume and value of visitors and where they've gone and who they were. So we've relied on other ways of doing this, and amongst those have been doing industry surveys, which I'm sure many of you will have undertaken at some point and been invited to participate with. We've also had a consumer sentiment tracker that we've been running on a regular basis in partnership with other organisations such as Visit Britain and Visit Wales. And that's given us some insight into the domestic tourism market when people are intending to travel and what they're intending to do. And I would really recommend you going to visitscotland.org and having a look at the wealth of information that we've gathered. Among the other alternative methods of being able to understand how to plan for the future is conducting scenario planning. Now, for people who don't know, scenario planning is a process where you start to understand what are the key factors that are determining how your business, how your industry, or how a system operates. And what we found was when we undertook that exercise that there were two fundamental processes that determine tourism at this particular point, and that's whether businesses can actually operate, whether they are open or closed, or they're very restricted in their operation, or there are no restrictions, and whether consumers are able to travel. So are people able to go on holiday? And now it could be that they might not be able to because of a national or regionalised lockdown, or it could be that they are unable to travel because of a confidence. So it could be that they were shielding, or they're just nervous about travel, and therefore that would determine the availability of markets. Anyway, once you've determined these factors, you can develop little stories that highlight different situations. And in our particular situation, we developed 5 scenarios, and I'll come on and describe those very briefly in a moment. But what I want to make clear is that scenario planning isn't about predicting the future. What it is about developing a number of possible futures, from those that could be the ideal through to those that might be quite challenging. And it's not that we are suggesting that any one of these scenarios is where we want to be. but it allows people, when they're developing their strategy or their business plans, they can take their plan and they can sort of say, how well will my plan work in these particular scenarios? So in a benign scenario, the plan might work fine. In a more challenging scenario, you might feel as though you have to make changes to staffing or training or investments or in operating procedures. And it just allows you that should one of these scenarios possibly develop, you know, you've got the ability to adapt and respond quite quickly to that, you know, sort of like a developing world, if you will. So, as I said, we developed 5 scenarios, and within the workshops, we just concentrated on 2. And the 2 that we concentrated on was one called our baseline scenario. Now, the baseline scenario is one which is similar to the world as it was in July 2020, and arguably one that could be describing how things are going to start as we get towards the end of April and maybe into May, when lockdown starts to lift within Scotland. So what it represents is businesses are able to trade and open up. However, that reopening could be gradual. There may be a rollout of the availability of markets, maybe starting off very local markets to a domestic Scottish market, to a UK domestic market, and eventually the possibility of international markets. Could be that there are restrictions on being able to operate, such as licensed premises only allowed to serve people outdoors, as we're seeing down in England. But it could also be the need for hygiene standards and demonstrating cleaning procedures to reassure visitors. So that's our kind of baseline scenario. As I said, it's one that we expect to see as we reopen from the end of April, but also, you know, as the world was around about July when we reopened before. The other scenario we looked at when we were doing the workshops, and we were doing these workshops from the start of this year up until March of this year, and it was one called 5 Winters scenario, and this was best described as the worst case scenario, and it was what would be the equivalent of 3 to 5 consecutive quarters of low season. Now, it could be argued that we've already seen 2 seasons, 2 low seasons as we went through Q4 of last year and also into Q1 of this year. And because of that, you know, we had lockdown, we had restrictions, and it was really to try and represent what would happen if there was like a lockdown or a severe decline in consumer spend, or there were business closures either through economic reasons or because of restrictions. And again, it was to ask people in this situation, what's your business plan? What is the situation that you're going to apply to be able to determine how to make it through this period? What is the strategy to see you through? So those are the 2 scenarios that we looked at, but we did have some others, and you'll see here that we had one called the old normal, which was essentially Scottish tourism in a pre-pandemic stage. So if you think about 2019 and before, and the situation there might lead to people thinking in terms of their strategy. What would I do differently? Maybe thinking more about responsible tourism, trying to address issues around, you know, the issues of over-tourism, which we were experiencing up to and including 2019. Well, scenario 3 was one called Doors Open, and this was one where, because of regionalised lockdowns, businesses were able to operate, but their actual markets were unavailable. So if you think about that situation about sort of early autumn last year, you had a situation where businesses in the Highlands and in the borders were outside of the restricted tier structure, and they were able to operate and they were allowed to open. But because the central belt was essentially locked down, you were unable to get visitors from places like Glasgow, Edinburgh, that central belt, and therefore, how does a business change its product and adapt to attracting maybe a local audience or attracting an audience that or consumers that not within that tiered belt, and what would be the process you go through to sort of bring those in. Final one was one called the long chill, and this almost represented the urban businesses that we had within the central belt at that same time. Now it would be a situation where you've got quite restricted operating within the cities, but you've not got you have visitors that might want to be able to come, but are unable to for various reasons. So if you think about the accommodation providers in places like Glasgow and Edinburgh, where there were possibly perceived barriers to travel that maybe weren't there. So during last year, a lot of visitors wanted to go to rural areas, they wanted to go to open areas, they thought sort of fresh air, countryside, that's where they wanted to be, and therefore cities suffered in terms of occupancy rates. So again, if you're a business in that situation, how do you respond? Now, the scenarios that we all developed were ones that it was in response to being able to provide planning at a national level. And it's quite interesting that we've been able to apply specific situations after we developed these scenarios in the summer last year to what has actually happened in the future. And it just shows the relationship that you can develop if you're monitoring performance, how you can sort of apply retrospectively to the scenarios. Anyway, during the workshops that we did with the bed and breakfast and guest houses that were invited, what we wanted to do is we wanted to take the scenarios and develop, following the lines of the toolkit, a kind of overarching strategy to understand what businesses would do in different situations. And to do that, we started off by developing a SWOT analysis. Now, for many of you, you'll be aware of a SWOT analysis. It's where you look at the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats for your sector or for your business. The strengths and weaknesses traditionally relate to factors that are under your control and are internal to the business. The opportunities and threats are generally external to the business or to the sector. Now, there was a very long list of strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats, and I've summarized them for you here in this table. Now, I will say that the first thing people said in terms of the strengths was the breakfast was the greatest strength of the bed and breakfast and the guest house, and I don't think there was any argument that it really is the cornerstone of the sector. However, when we brought that together and looked more broadly at what people said, it was these 4 points. The strengths of the bed and breakfast and guest house sector is certainly its reputation and pride in service and product, and it's the fact that you've got owner operators that are deeply connected to the product and the brand that they're presenting. So it's that personal and customizable experience that underpins that reputation that is seen amongst the visitors that come along. You've also got the fact that because it's generally a relatively small business compared to, say, the hotel industry, that there is a connection to the community. These are people who live and work and are embedded and represent the communities that they're in. And that, of course, is reflected within the product and what visitors are looking for. They're looking for that authentic experience. And the other strength that came through quite strongly was the geographical spread. The bed and breakfast and guest houses are represented throughout cities, rural areas, islands, throughout Scotland, and often they're places where other forms of accommodation aren't available. So it's bed and breakfast and self-catering that have the greatest distribution, and therefore ones that provide the greatest sort of range of services to people. So when we moved on to looking at weaknesses, it came through that its popularity with international markets was quite sort of clearly defined amongst the workshop. And whilst we recognise that obviously domestic markets do use bed and breakfast and guest houses, it was the number of people that responded back about their concerns over when the international markets would be coming back that kind of came through. The other one was the role of the if you want, the commercial model. And people were pointing out that whilst it's not the case for all sort of operators, for some there are challenges in terms of skills and management and being able to run a business under a sort of like a commercial model, if you want. So this led through to issues over consistent marketing in terms of sort of planning and being able to respond rapidly to changing situations. And whilst it was also recognised that because the sector is run, is defined by the people who are operating within it, it's being able to keep that authentic sort of experience of coming into somebody's home, if you will, but also having behind that a strong management kind of style that would be able to support all the uncertainty that we're going through at the moment. The other aspect that came through was being able to adapt to change and being able to communicate that. And again, there was comments that were around being able to understand how the market is changing, how people are looking for new things. Maybe they're looking for something that is sort of unique. And something that is comparable to their other experiences that they have maybe within the serviced accommodation sector. And being able to communicate that, and again sort of being able to show skills in terms of communication through social media and sort of like digital communication, that may be a weakness in some aspects of the sector as well. And then the final weakness that came through was where's the next generation going to be coming through? And it was recognised that we've got many operators that have been providing their service, this service for a number of years, and are possibly coming to the end and looking towards retirement. And they were wondering when the next generation is going to come in and how the next generation will be able to access the experience that is abundantly available within the industry itself. Looking more externally on the opportunities and threats, there were opportunities identified in terms of product diversification and creating that reason to visit, and linking back to responding to changing consumer behaviour. Technology adoption, in particular online booking, the role of digital and social media for being able to share stories and your product to a wider audience, connect with them. Market diversification, and again, kind of linked back to the reliance on international markets, but also it could be to do with connecting maybe with families and what I've referred to as activity tribes. So people who invite maybe golfing groups. If those golfers aren't necessarily traveling, it could be that you could look to other groups such as cyclists, motorcyclists, walking groups, those kinds of things. And then finally, there was the connection to the community and the possibility of collaboration and cross-selling. And something that we found with other sectors that we spoke to, there was very much reliance on other areas of the tourism industry that was defining their reopening strategies. So, for example, holiday parks were looking towards the attraction sector before they made their plans. The attraction sector was looking towards hospitality and retail to support their reopening plans. Self-caterers, again, were looking towards attractions and hospitality as well, in terms of being able to provide a destination sort of theme that would be attractive to bring people in, as opposed to being on their own. In terms of the threats, it goes back to what I said before about sort of 2019 and the worry about the return of over-tourism, and possibly now with the reopening of areas, engagement with community over the possibility of anti-tourism sentiments. And we know that last year there were concerns in particular areas of, people traveling in to an area, possibly that concern over sort of health and welfare might have diminished with the vaccine rollout compared to last year, but certainly that is a possibility of returning. There's the threat of not being able to get those regular sort of like events like horse racing, sort of business conferences, the golfing groups that were mentioned, sort of theatre seasons as well, that many bed and breakfasts and guest houses rely on to bring people in regular times and sort of, like returning visitors as well. There's also that sort of threat from, where is the next generation going to come from, of a reduction in the overall sector, really leading to, through the retirement of some people and the possibility of conversion to self-catering and alternative accommodation use. And therefore, what does that mean to the bed and breakfast and guest house sort of sector as a whole? And then there's competition from other sectors. It's the adage of people know what they're going to get when they stay in a branded hotel, but through strong communication from bed and breakfast, you can overcome that concern and sell the benefits of staying in bed and breakfast or guest house. Anyway, we took all of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and you can see them on the outside of here. And what we did was, the next stage was to take aspects of that and sort of say, okay, so well, if we take the strengths and opportunities and the threats and the strengths, how do we maximize the opportunities from the strengths? How can we minimize the weaknesses to diminish the threats and so on? And from this, we built up a matrix where we can take each of these elements, almost the longer list of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and come up with some suggestions of how to respond to different situations based around what was identified for the sector. Anyway, to capitalize on the strengths, it came through quite clearly, and again we saw this in many of the case studies that we looked at. The role of technology, many sort of bed and breakfast and guest houses are using social media, not just for being able to promote their products, but also to develop a community so that people become interested in the local area. They can sort of buy into the stories that people have in it, and it provides that kind of level of personalization before arrival, and also gives you a channel to be able to go out with information either on specific sort of offers, or to be able to communicate should, you know, say adverse weather or sort of transport issues be coming through. People know there's a channel to be able to come through. Many of you obviously use local suppliers in terms of the promotion, and go back to the breakfast. Many people are sort of name checking their food producers, but certainly it increases the authenticity, and it connects back to the visitor in what they're looking for. They don't want a generic experience. They want to actually visit the place that's in. So if they know that there is a field to fork kind of connection between the food that they're eating and the local produce, and also that the money that they're spending is being distributed within the local area, that all adds to people's experience that they're sort of going through. We've already mentioned about making it personalized and customizable, but that personalization and premiumization does go a long way in the minds of the visitor as well, that they're getting something nobody else is getting. And certainly your sector is one where this can really apply strongly, because you have that ability to customize, because you're the ones who control your product. Certainly one of the big things that came through was about facilities. Many people are providing electric car and electric bike charging points and promoting those to visitors as well. And this is certainly becoming at the moment a differentiator between other accommodation types, but certainly will become more expected as we move more towards 2030 and the bigger rollout of electric vehicles. In terms of being able to minimize strengths, certainly because we're talking about maybe local audiences, it's being able to get that word of mouth, that local buzz to get out, so that you can get referrals, you know, in the local area. There's the promotion of wellness and responsible tourism, which is a major push at the moment, certainly as we have almost a captive domestic market. And we could be trying to engage with people who wouldn't maybe normally go abroad on holiday, and, you know, maybe don't appreciate or have a greater or wider understanding of the accommodation range that's available within Scotland. So, you know, being able to push out messages that associate with kind of sustainability, responsible tourism and wellness, that will sort of, like, you know, really kind of reassure domestic audiences that the sector is certainly something to engage with. One of the things that we came through on was the role of being able to provide access to volunteering opportunities, and just being aware of opportunities within your area is something that you will be able to provide, and certainly may make people want to extend stays if they're able to access into those, as it's increasingly an attractive activity that the people want to undertake. Looking more sort of like generally towards limiting the weaknesses, it was all about maintaining good communication with customers, and many people within the sector are promoting direct booking. And one of the benefits, obviously, of direct booking is being able to have that direct communication, so that you can keep people up to date with local restrictions or any issues that have arisen directly, rather than having to go through an intermediary. There was the whole need to retain, you know, the authentic personal kind of products that you want to give through your business, but to develop a more commercial approach, One of the things that became apparent very early on during the pandemic, when support and grant schemes were coming out, was the number of particularly bed and breakfasts that didn't have a business bank account, and this led to issues in being able to provide the grant funding to those businesses to support them. And it was certainly one that had to be addressed, from those that were providing the funding. So, it's essential to be able to retain that authentic experience, but to underpin that with the commercial approach. There was the need to be able to maybe diversify and choose the type of guests that you want. So it looks as though we'll be looking at domestic audiences rather than international audiences in the short to medium term. But what kind of guests do you want, and how do you go out for those? And certainly you could sort of follow areas of interest for you. So possibly advertising in cycling magazines, if you're interested in cycling, might open up a new market that you weren't being able to access before. I think it's important to show your sort of hygiene standards, and show that you don't need to be a hotel to be able to demonstrate that you've got sort of very strict and stringent sort of like quality standards. So be proud in the fact that you're part of the Good to Go scheme. Promote the safety regimes that you've put in place, and certainly promote the quality assurance certification that you have, to demonstrate that the standards that you have go above and beyond and are a reflection of the pride that you have in the product. Because if it's not, that doesn't necessarily mean that it gets translated through to the potential customer. The other ones were about becoming ambassadors for your destination, engaging with your destination management organization, because tourism businesses are very much interconnected. As I mentioned, it was something about the reliance on the attractions, waiting for hospitality, waiting on accommodation. So engaging with your destination group will make a stronger destination package, and therefore will be more attractive to visitors, knowing that there is a range of activities to do. So by you promoting local attractions and hospitality businesses, that will bring people in and also get that word of mouth out as well. There's mention about just making sure that your suppliers haven't been disrupted. In particular, there was mentions of the possibility that electricians could have been furloughed, and therefore if you needed electrical testing, there might be a sudden shortage of available appointments, because there'll be a reduced pool of people to do those. And I think the main one is looking to the strength of your association as well, making sure that you listen to what they're doing because of the direct line they have with public sector and the government, and being able to be informed of support packages, grant schemes, also being able to be part of a community, to be able to share skills and share experiences, so that if you're not sure on a particular situation, or you're looking for new trends or new markets, being able to reach out to people to get that advice on what would be best to apply to them would be ones that would be very strongly appreciated. Anyway, if we just look at a couple of case studies very briefly, the ones that I want to pull up here represent an interesting range. Drynie House, in the old Drynie House in the Black Isle, is one that has shown quite nice adaptation and growth. We talked about maybe the attraction of family markets away from couples, and you can see here that they promote family suites. They also have the electric car charging, but this is a business that has been trading for a number of years, and they are sort of really adopting the changing trends in consumer behavior without losing the essence of the product that they have, which is based on sort of quality. Responsible tourism, and we've got the Dalgreeny Estate, so guest house and Hunting Tower Lodge, up at Fort William, are two that are really embracing the kind of sustainable elements of this. Dalgreeny Guest House is one where there's very much about sort of provenance, and the sustainability statement reflects that, whereas Hunting Tower Lodge is one that is really promoting the natural landscape that is based in terms of wildlife and the kind of eco product that has been developed. And then there's diversification in terms of Newton Farm Holidays, obviously sort of associated with the agritourism sector, but certainly you've got the bed and breakfast, you've got self-catering, and you've also got like the farm products with the farm tours that are being promoted there. And so just for me to sum up very briefly, we do expect that when reopening happens, it's going to be hyperlocal. We've moved from the stay at home to stay local message that has been coming out, but then we'll be moving towards the Scottish domestic, rest of UK, and eventually international audiences. And therefore, how are you going to promote your product to those specific markets? With most of the other sectors as well, we've found that the strengths and opportunities are based about being agile, adaptable, and your demonstration of quality. And the weaknesses and threats can be minimized through your confidence, being innovative and flexible. There is the collaboration that needs to be done with other tourism operators and the local community for their reassurance. And I would recommend being involved with your trade body and destination management organisation so that you don't miss opportunities that might present themselves. Keep clear lines of communication with your customers, suppliers, staff and colleagues. Certainly with staff, they may have situations that weren't envisaged even a few months or a few years ago in terms of sort of schooling and maybe having school-aged children or younger, that may mean that they might need to be more flexible in terms of their engagement with yourselves. But certainly, I think through the development of your skills and the business approach that you can take without losing that personal touch, that will provide a lot more resilience for the sector into the future. And really it is just to finish off with, in your response to the future, how will you plan, prepare and position for reopening, but also preparing should there be maybe a third lockdown or regionalised restrictions that may come at short notice. What are your plans to respond to those at the same time? That is everything from me. I'm going to hand back to Denise now, and I think we've got some time for some questions.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks very much. We've got a couple of questions have come in, so do let us know if anyone has any further questions. One question in particular is about the dominance of big global search engines like Expedia, Booking.com, and how businesses can work with them, but equally I think how businesses can work alternatively as well. Chris, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on this, but certainly I would just start off by talking about some of the work that we have been doing together with Business Gateway. Patrick O'Shaughnessy, who normally with us isn't with us today, has been working very closely with Business Gateway on a whole programme of activity, Digital Boost. There was a programme previously, but this year's programme has been absolutely revamped and has been extremely successful so far. 10 different seminars, all on different facets of working digitally. Now, We are planning to do a new set of these, so everybody do watch out for that. And among those webinars, there will be distinct webinars on how to work with OTAs, for those of you who are keen to do that, but equally a focus on how to improve your own digital capability, your own website, your own ability from the point of view of search to be successful in attracting business directly to yourselves for direct booking. So watch out for that. It is something that has been running, but we do intend to be working together with Business Gateway to be delivering a new diet of this. So definitely watch out for that one, or speak to the industry relationship manager in your area will be able to point you to that as well. We will make sure that in the follow-up to this session that we'll provide you with some links to the kind of webinars that I'm talking about there. Chris, did you have anything to add to that, or does that kind of cover that?
Yeah, I mean, just very briefly, I would say that OTAs like Expedia and Booking.com have their place. They obviously have access to a massive market. I would say, particularly for people that are looking towards international markets, organizations like Expedia and Booking.com kind of come into their own, and it's about developing your relationship with your account manager. I would say that it doesn't mean that you shouldn't think about your own online booking facility and developing your own channels to have direct communication, particularly as we'll be looking towards domestic markets. So I would say, as Denise said, contact either Business Gateway or Visit Scotland, where we'll be able to provide sort of advice on how to be able to develop your online booking channels and be able to develop your social media channels. Yeah, they have their place. Lots of people do look at them, and it's about defining what you feel is right for your approach. But at the moment, I think direct bookings would be a particularly strong avenue to go down.
Another question that has come in is about, are there any plans for Visit Scotland or the government to be operating any voucher schemes for tourism? Another question also around the promotion of cities. And I have an answer that perhaps addresses both of these at once. That is the task force exercise that was done by STERG and Scottish Government to establish a whole raft of projects that will be kicking off imminently and in the course of the next months. Among those projects, there is indeed a couple of ideas around doing voucher schemes in there, and also some activity that is very specific, activity that supports all sorts of facets of Scottish tourism, but there is something in there specifically for the cities as well. Now, there is going to be more information on that in a presentation that is due to take place tomorrow. There is a presentation which will be delivered by Riddle Graham, our Director for Industry and Destination Development, together with Vicky Miller, our Director of Marketing. And Vicky in particular will be going through our marketing strategy, and we'll talk about these different projects that are coming up. So I would encourage everyone to, if you can, go on to VisitScotland.org again, look for that in our events section, and you will find that there, the Planning for Recovery webinar taking place tomorrow, and watch that one. If not, it will be, if you're not able, then it will be filmed, it will be recorded, and you'll be able to catch up on that afterwards. But as these projects are developed, more and more information about these will be available on VisitScotland.org as well. I think with just 2 minutes left to go, it's over to me quickly to just wind up. And thank Chris again for his presentation there. A lot of really useful stuff in there, and as he said earlier, scenario planning does not predict the future. I love this one. Scenario planning does not predict the future, but it does help us to decide what to do now in order to shape it. So I hope some of the stuff that you've heard today will fire you up and you'll feel inspired to go and download that toolkit from VisitScotland.org and have a go with it, whether you do it on your own or you do it as a team effort, but see whether and how you think it can help you with your thinking and how you position your thinking to respond to the different scenarios that are facing us and may come up yet. Next steps for us will be to put this presentation up on VisitScotland.org together with some of the companion specific sector assets that we've created through these conversations about B&B and guest house sector. So watch out for that coming. There is tomorrow's webinar, watch out for that. There will also be some practical support on digital support, that the digital boost activity, so watch out there. Just keep watching VisitScotland.org. There is lots and lots and lots of support on there. So finally, just thanks so much everybody for giving over some of your valuable time to come and join us and to listen today, and we hope it's provided some really useful food for thought. And finally, I'll just hand over to Melanie for some last words. Melanie.
Thanks very much, Denise, and thanks, Chris, for really interesting presentation. And I think it's certainly captured all of the thoughts that we had on our workshop session, and hopefully has given people a lot of things to think about. At the end of the day, our bed and breakfast and guest houses are very unique and different, and not one size fits all. So it's excellent to be able to have all of this information to capture and look at ideas and how we can work with Visit Scotland. And I think for me, there's a couple of things really. It's one, being able to look at our own businesses and being able to put a strategy together so that we can be resilient to face whatever the future is ahead. But also as a sector group to come together as a united voice really, and for us as a Scottish Guesthouse B&B Alliance to look at also how we can help support businesses and how we can start to bring people together and bring businesses together, work with DMOs and work with Visit Scotland. And I think for us now, we need to really take away a few of those thoughts and look at how we can change those threats into opportunities, and the strength certainly of the sector. I mean, the real strength at the moment is that the bed and breakfast and guest house sector does have the perfect opportunity in recovery. We're really, kind of within the local community, we're connected, we've, got a reputation on pride and standards. So I think that the time is now for bed and breakfast to really come into their own and to really show, our sector as something really positive. So as an organisation, we're looking over the next few weeks to hopefully formalise ourselves in terms of establishing our organisation. We'll continue to provide updates on the website, Facebook page, and within our newsletter. We're hoping to set up a membership. We're not sure at the moment what that's going to look like, but we hope to be able to send out a survey shortly. So please do connect with us. And we want to hear from you and to understand, what businesses need in terms of support, and what kind of type of trade organisation looks like. So we'll hopefully be interacting with through all of those channels. But we really want to kind of start to work to promote the bed and breakfast sector. And I think one of the key things is, obviously, we're all operating small micro tourism businesses, and now we need to, kind of work with the OTAs, but also work under our own power to try and develop something that's more meaningful, which is bringing sort of resources within to our own businesses and within to our own economy, and look at how we do that. So this has been a really good start for that journey, so thank you very much, and we look forward to working with Visit Scotland in the future on it.